What are we doing now?
We're going to continue.
Okay,
I mean,
We're up to the kitchen.
yeah, we're up to the end of the mimer. Page Tofnun on the bottom. You have a sefer?
No, but I might take that one up.
Okay. And I just wanted to point out, yesterday we were learning about the Aver Sha'al HaKarim. So there's a whole erech, there's a whole entry in the encyclopedia. Sefer Erchem. You familiar with the Sefer Erchem? Rabbi, the Rabbi instructed him in 1958 to begin making encyclopedia on all of Chassidus. So he's made now 7 volumes, I think.
What are we up to?
6 volumes. Aleph Vav. Oishis. He's up to more like Aleph Ches, actually. Every 20 years he releases one. Literally every 10 years, 1 volume comes out. He's a one-man show. I mean, he has a little help from Shalom Kharatonov. But it's great. I mean, it's really a comprehensive gathering of everything by subject in Ayin Beis. So, you know, I've talked to him once. I remember he said to me once that, look, everything fits into Atzilus, Achdus, If he gets that done in his lifetime, he feels he's done all of Chassidus. Because they're all Aleph, you know. So he did It's great. It's power. It's everything. If you know you want to have everything in one place, it's there. But it's in Hebrew. So he has an entry, Avir Shal HaKarim. We mentioned yesterday at the bottom of page Tov Mem Tes, the Avir Shal HaKarim. I may have one more Ayin Beis. Should I bring it down? Sure? It's only a flight up. Okay. So Avir Shal HaKarim is a level, I just wanted to be thorough. It's a whole thing he talks here about. So he says, I'll just say briefly, Avir Shabegalgelis means in the skull. If the skull has the brain, but the brain, you know, is like has room. That's why the person, let's say, he gets punched or in boxing or in football. You see that the brain has room to jiggle. It's not like tight in the skull. There's space around it. So Kabbalah talks about that space. That space is called the Avir. So there's the brain itself. The physical brain is like in here in the skull, but around the brain there's like a space that leaves that I don't know what it's called in medicine.
Cavity?
Yeah?
Maybe a cavity.
It's a cavity. It's not a cavity. It's probably a specific.
It's full. Everything's full. It's meninges and stuff like that.
Yeah, but no, but when you see it, I've seen always in images that when a person, for example, gets this, it's specially made that the brain.
No, it's soft. It's soft tissue.
I know the brain is soft tissue, but there's also space. I'm telling you, there's space. Yes. I mean, space. I'm not saying there's nothing there, but it's not. But bottom line is, it says, shal gabi hakarim hachifa l'mayach. In other words, the way Kabbalah puts it is that the brain itself has like a crown. You know, I don't know if it's a physical crown, but it's the top of the brain. And on top of that is this Avir. So Kabbalah talks about all these levels, what they are in Ruchnius. So he says, what is this level? Avir shal karim hachifa l'maychis timah. So Meichus Timah is the crown, and the Atzmis of Meichus Timah is the space. So think of it like this. Conscious mind would be the brain itself, left brain, right brain, center brain, whatever. The unconscious is in the top of the brain. Think of it like the inner dimension. I don't know if top means literally top, it's inner. And then Avir is considered to be the Atzmis of Meichus Timah. That's what he says here, and this is what he's bringing him to, being Meichus Timah, the Golgalus. Yeah, the Golgalton.
And the skull after that?
That's what it says in Eitz Chaim.
The skull is the Golgalton. The skull itself is...
The skull is, we learned that the skull is Arich,
It's Arich, right.
So it's higher because it protects, because it's bone, basically, right?
Arich, yeah.
But it's not the Meichus Timah. So
it's Chachma...
Meichus Timah is...
Chachma Varach.
Right. But Arich, in general, Arich, the rest of Arich, not the Meich of Arich, is the skull.
So it's like Kesser, which is higher. Basically.
Yeah. And Primi Satik is above it all, because Primi Satik is not even considered in the... It all connects to Primi Satik. Primi Satik, I don't know if it has a place where it rests. That I have to look into.
Halo on top.
So this previous of Chachma, that's where the seichel comes from? When you get someone has a
basically, when you have a havraka, a blitz, right? It's coming from a state like what's sometimes called Kayach HaMaskil, and sometimes called Meichus Timah. Yeah.
Kayach Ma.
It's the Ma that's coming from Kayach HaMaskil, and that's Lashon of Chkira, and Lashon of Kabbalah Chassidus. This is Meichus Timah. It's like the unconscious mind.
But it's higher from the...
but it's intellect, but it's moichin. It's not just... it's premise, which is meichen. It is intellect, ultimately. I mean, I'm not going to go through it all here, but in this place, I'm just looking quickly here. Here he says it's the level of Meichus Tima that's Krecha Maskil, right? It's the level that also determines how much will come out in Chochmah. It's also, in other words, it's basically like the what do they call it? The guard of the house. What do they call it? The watch.
The Shomer?
Yeah.
Doorman?
The doorman. The guard. The gatekeeper. The gatekeeper. So it's like the gatekeeper of how much comes out. Remember we talked about chemicals and stuff. How much comes from that level into the mind. It comes from that level. Anyway, let's continue. I just want to see if you bring Ayin Beis here. I think the water is heated. Can you check if I put on the fire? I just don't hear it.
I think you didn't some coffee. Some drip.
Okay. Ready to go? So in the bottom of page Tov Nun, and just to summarize, okay, we'll learn the Kitzur, but essentially this last chapter we learned, he's bringing it all back together now. We learned about the two different types of Keteris. The Keteris every day brought, and the Keteris brought in Yom Kippur, which is connected to the Shemen HaMishchus Kodesh, which is the Shemen that was connected to every day, and the Shemen HaToiv, which is the Shemen from Atik.
It's anointing.
Right. And what's the difference between the two? He said the difference is, we talked about the Beis Hamikdash has three departments. There's the outer is Biyah, the Oil Moed, the Chatzor Oil Moed. The inner is Kodesh, the Heichel. That's where the Mizbeach HaPnimi is, meaning the Keteris are brought there. And then and on the outer the Karbonos are brought, and then there's the Kodesh Kedoshim, which is only Yom Kippur, is the Keteris of Yom Kippur. So what is it in Ruchnius? He explained from the Idru Rabbi there's a difference between the two Makifim, Makif of Chaya and Makif of Yechida. Makif of Chaya is Makif of Er Yosher, meaning it's a Makif that comes from the Neshama feeling. In Avodah, it's the Neshama feeling, the Haflah, the awe, and the God is beyond us. And Makif of Yechida is connected to Tshuva, where you're actually transforming Mamash Shalosh Klipsat Meir, Ra Gomor, to Toiv. And he explains that these are the two levels of the two nostrils that you have, that the Chayin and Chayin the Chayin, life and life of life. So the difference between them is one is life. So that's connected very much to, as he spoke about, the energy flow of life, like the heartbeat has Rotzev Veshuv, so too does the breath have exhale and inhale. He spoke about that life comes more from the ultimate arbiter and the barometer of life of Piyach Halach is the breath, not the heart. So even if the heart stops, you still check the breath, because the breath is connected to the source of life. He explained it's the Shar HaMeichin, right? The nose is the gate to Meichin. So and from Meichin comes Chayis, the life of the person, but that's just regular Chayis. And Chayin the Chayin, this left nostril, that's the right nostril. The left nostril connects to the Atzmis of Meichus Tema, not just the Chesenis of Meichus Tema, and that brings down a new ruach, a new form of energy, not just so it can revive the neshama even when it's faint. And Aveda, that's the Aveda Pitam V'das, is Rusa Deliba. I'm sorry, Aveda Pitam V'das is the Karbonis, Primis, like food, Eichel. The Reach of the Keteris is Makiv, but it's Makiv of Chaya, so it's Chayin. And then there's the Keteris of Yom Kippur is Makiv of Yechida, which is Tshuva, the power to completely transform darkness to light. And then finally he said that's the Baal of the Baal Tshuva over the Tzaddik, that a Baal Tshuva can go into a place where Tzaddik cannot go. And the Lashon was the Klal Gadol, Tzad of Meridas HaNefesh Magi L'mayla Me'enek HaNefesh. That when it comes from the Tzad and Meridas, from being distant, is always deeper than even the Avid B'tainugim of a Tzaddik. Because the distance creates this deep Mina Meitze Karasi Ka, Anoni B'merchiv Ka. So when you call from the narrowness, from the constraints, constriction, it brings out a merchiv atzmi of atzmus ein safe, and that's the difference between the two levels, the two types of ketevus. The chetzenis of chachmas tema and the pnimis of chachmas tema. So we'll continue now. The bottom line, the bottom two lines of Taf Nun. Okay. Valpi hanal yuvam. According to the above that we just finished learning, we'll soon learn the kitzur, so we'll begin. We'll understand what it says. Vayemer Hashem el Avram lech lecha. Remember, the mimer here is going back now to the pasuk. We'll understand what Hashem said to Avram lech lecha. Tini Yedua the Avram or Avram. Avram, when he's still called Avram without the hey, not Avraham, but Avram is two words. Avram, meaning a father. As we'll see in a moment, that's Chachmeh. And Ram means exalted. So it has Avram was exalted Abba. What is that? Sheichel Hanela Mechol Rayan. Like he says right away in Teireh Pasha Lech Lecha. It means a concealed Seichel Mechol Rayan, concealed from any concept. It refers to the level that's completely concealed. What level is this? Meiches Tema. In other words, Meiches Tema or Seichel Hanelam Mechol Rayan. So Avram is Av is Chachmeh Abba. So Abba itself is Chachmeh Gluya. Avram is Chachmeh as it's in its exalted state, completely concealed. That's the level of Avram. However, in order to draw down the Pnimius and the Atzmis of this concealed Mechin, which is B'chinas Mechid Atika Mamish, which is, remember, we talked about Pnimius Mechid Tema connects to Atik, the source of the whole thing. That's why Hashem said to Avram Avinu, Lech lecha, leave. Sheyagia l'sharshim mekere, Lech lecha, go where? You say Lech lecha is telling Avram. Meiches Tema is in this level. What's Hashem saying? You go somewhere. Go where? Sheyagia l'sharshim mekere, go to your sherish hamakir, to your source and root. So Avram himself, before Lech lecha, is just the level of Seichel Anela Mechora and Meiches Tema. But since we're looking to go, Meiches Tema should go and travel to its source. Remember, it's drawing down from Atik. That's the tzivui, that's the mitzvah. Hashem says to Avram, Lech lecha. Go where? To go to your Sheir Shemakir, in Makiv the Yechida, which is Atik.
That Shuva Ratza.
It doesn't really say here. It sounds like Rotze, but it doesn't matter. It's Lech lecha. It's some travel. He's not talking about bringing it back down. He's talking about going to the Sheir Shema. He's explaining the whole pasuk. So we have Avram, Lech lecha. Now Lech lecha from where? Ma'artzecha. Maladetecha u'mebeis avicha. Let's go back to the pasuk. He's telling. Good morning. He's telling the pshat. He's telling. So the pasuk is pasuk. So the Eibishter is telling Avram the level of Meiches Tema. Lech lecha, go to your Sheir Shemakir, the Makif of Yechida. Now continue. Ma'artzecha. What's Ma'artzecha? V'alzeim Ma'artzecha pirish Ma'artzis v'chumrius. Meaning you have to leave the Artzis and Chumrius, the earthiness, and the Chumrius is the coarseness of Elam Hazeh, or canal. Like we learned earlier, the Lahagia L'B'chinas Makif Yechida. This is beautiful. In order to reach Makiv Yechida, B'chinas Hazaza Atzmis. Remember, we learned that why does the Klal Gadol, why does Tzad or Meridas HaNefesh, when it's distant from God, have such power? Because it shakes you up completely. When you're aware how dark it is, how distant it is, the way it shakes up the nefesh, a tzaddik can never have that. Because a tzaddik has a pleasant experience, so to speak. But a shock treatment can only come from someone who's really in a very dark place, when you become aware.
In a mitzvah.
Hazaza atzmis, exactly. That's hazaza. He said before, it's hazaza sanefesh. It shakes up your whole mitzias. And you suddenly realize how far you are, how distant, how dark it is. So he's saying to reach makiv the yechida can only come b'chinas hazaza shabo min hamet menagid b'keichei echazud dafka. It can only come from a menagid, from an opposition, from some darkness, from some challenge. The bottom line, the power, the what's the word, the thrust that comes from running from something that's dark that's the only thing that can catapult somebody into mamish, into yechida, into. So in case you're having a difficult day, think about that.
Why is Davka Makif? Why is Davka Makif? Why not Yechida itself?
Because he's talking. Everything is here in the makifim. Yechida is makif. See, makif. He doesn't talk about the previous. I mean, B'chal Yechida and Chaya Makif. He keeps calling it Makif the Chaya, Makif the Yechida. I don't think he means Makif the Yechida as opposed to previous. He means the level of Makif of Yechida. Because he says, he's speaking earlier, that there's two levels in Makifim. Arich and Atik. Yosher, Makif, Yosher, Makif, Erchezer. And in this case, Chaya Yechida. So he says clearly, everything, it's Makif. Keiches Primim is Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Chai Yechida is Makif always. I mean, I'm sure in the Makif Gufa there's two levels, but here he's just calling everything Makif here. Makif Yechida. Okay, so that's what it's saying to Avram. Let's go back to the Pasuk. So Lech Lecha, Avram, Meches Timah should travel to the Shedish, into Atik, into Makif of Yechida. That comes Ma'artzecha. So because Avram lived in Artzecha, in the Chumrius, Dafka from there, he was able to be catapulted into Makif of Yechida. Okay. Dafka from the Menagid. V'zel lech lecha ma'artzecha. This is the meaning of lech lecha. Ma'artzecha, leave your homeland. Shahilu chiyim ha'artzis v'achumrius. It doesn't just mean physically leave where you lived. It means that you should leave the artzis, the earthiness, and the coarseness, the chumrius, because through this you will reach the root and the source of your neshama. This is also what it says in Medrash Moshel. It's luchis shel apuf l'simin. What is that? Let me see the beginning of the Maimer. Does he bring this Medrash? Yeah. Okay, in the beginning of the Maimer, I didn't learn it here with you, so let me look at it. The beginning of the Maimer, it says like this. He has these questions. What do you need? Ma'atzcha, malatacha. And the main thing is, okay. So he says, Medrash is Lama hay Avram Avinu Deimel Tzluchis Shel Apuf. Shel Apuf L'Siman. Mukefes Samid Psil Umaneches Bezaviz V'haya Rechen Native Kivin Shel Taflim Rechen Native. Okay.
Like a perfume or something.
No, right. Sluchis is a glass. It's like a
jug.
A jar, whatever. Shel Apuf L'Siman Mukefes Samid Psil Umaneches Bezaviz. It's like a jar or a jug, a glass. A pufli siemens looks like sounds like some type of spice, some type of perfume, probably. Mukefes samid psil, that's surrounded by
sealed.
Huh?
Basically sealed.
Yeah. Sealed, right?
So
exactly.
you can't
Samid psil. What's samid? Psil is like a psil is a.
Solid puzzle is
a seal. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Okay, umaneches bezavis, and it's put away on the side. V'loy hoya reichen native, and its smell does not escape basically. So it doesn't right seal. Kivin shemetaltelim ma'isay imamokim lemokim reichen native. When you move it, it begins to, in other words, release the smell. So that's what the Medrash says. Kach kach amalei Hakadosh Baruch Hu Avram taltel atzmecha mamokim lemokim azay. Shimchem is gadol. So the mashal goes like this. Avram Avinu before Lech Lecha was like this perfume locked in a jar. When they said Lech Lecha, move, the jar is like when we're moving. So you know that from says there that his name became great right afterwards. It says v'shimcha whatever. So that happened only through Lech Lecha. So the Alter Rebbe Rashab asks, what's the example from the smell? Sheyereich nediv. By the tiltul dafka. Uma inyan hagdol Hashem. In other words, why an example from perfume? Why reich? I mean, there could be a lot of examples. Why dafka that? And what it means tiltul, and what is the tiltul dafka? And what is hagdol Hashem? Hagdol Hashem gab Avram. What's the big strength of? What's the big advantage, big virtue of a great name by Avram Avinu, who was tachlis habitl v'ashiflus, anechi offer ve'efet. Okay, that's the question. Now he's answering it. That's the connection to reich. I got it. You know, reich, smell. So he says like this. V'zeu gamkin masha omer b'medrash. I'm back to Tofnun Aleph. B'medrash moshel l'sluchi shel apuf l'siman. That Avram is compared to a jug that has perfume, and only through moving it does the perfume get released. Here's the connection to reich. We're talking about the smell of kteris. Remember, kteris is what reaches into the makif. Chal smells makif. Since Lech Lecha Ma'atzich is talking leaving the artzius, in other words, escaping the darkness of the Warmin HaMeitzar and reaching into the etzem. So the moshel is basically saying that you're talking about the reich of kteris. Shahu inyan reich hatshuva. That's the smell of tshuva. Ba'avram avinu shalom v'shalom hoy ze inyan hanisyenis. Where was by Avram? Avram didn't have the averis.
You have the
right. So what was it? The nisyenis, the tests that he went through. Sha'ay deizeh bol b'chinas makiv di'echida. So for Avram Avinu, the nisyenis, which began with Lech Lecha, is brought him to the same level that Shuvah brings us, which is the makif of Yechida, the reich. That's why it's there. V'zeu tiltul atzmacham mokim mokim. That's why the mashal is so perfect here, because you're trying to reach the level of reich of the makif of Yechida, and that's only possible through Lech Lecha, through movement, and that's in the mashal, the moving of the jar. That you take it out of the corner and you move it around, basically shake it up. That's what the tiltul is. In the moshel, the movement of the jar or the perfume is in the nimshal, the concept of Lech Lecha, movement. However, this movement has to come, not just movement. This is, I guess, not in the moshel, because the moshel doesn't speak about artzecha, it just speaks about movement. But he's adding here that the movement with Avram has to come dafka from artzecha. It's not just movement. It has to come from like the Baal Tshuva power. Avram is the Nisyenis. That has to come from Erchezer, meaning dafka from a dark place. And Avram, of course, he was leaving where his homeland, which was a pagan world. Right, exactly.
But what does it mean that Mashiach is going to make that tzaddikim do tshuva?
That's what he said right in the last Perek.
So what's pshat?
Here he teaches pshat that let me just see.
Are they coming from a place?
Hold on. Well, he spoke about Mashiach being Meirach V'doyim, that Mashiach does it through Reich. Here he doesn't really explain how. But bottom line, it says like this, that Mashiach will also bring tzaddikim to tshuva. The only way to understand it, I think, there's a few places, different explanations. One explanation is that Mashiach will reach into the atzmius of where tshuva reaches, and be able to be mamshech to tzaddikim. How tzaddikim themselves will do tshuva.
Maybe like Abraham through the test.
Maybe the shenis.
Yeah, but they're not in that category. Like, no. What's the difference? What's the chiddush that Mashiach?
I would say Shlomo Zalman had this, and he said that had he given a test to a perfect tzaddik, has no evil, nothing. He said he actually gave him temporary yetzaharas each time. That's what he told me.
He doesn't explain it here. I would have to say there's a few ways you could probably explain it. One is that it's remember, Mashiach has to bring it to them. They can't bring it on their own. It says Mashiach also tzaddikai b'tiyufta. So something Mashiach does that causes a tzaddik to be able to reach a level that he could never reach on his own. The question is, what does he do? And what is the tzaddik achieving? You have the concept that a tzaddikim have, like that Rizal said al chet. They asked him why he said al chet and Yom Kippur. They asked his talmidim why he said al chet and Yom Kippur. The answer is because it wasn't for him, but it was for the whole generation. In other words, the tzaddik has everybody inside of him. Like the story of the Mittler Rebbe that he had to find bedakos. So if there's a Baal Tshuva in the world that did Tshuva, the tzaddik of the generation has to have it somewhere. And maybe Mashiach will like reveal that part. To, remember Klal Yisrael is like one Kemachas.
Right.
So just like a Kain is Yetzos and his Aveda, a Baal Tshuva in a way gives Tshuva also to a tzaddik. So if there's people in this generation that did Tshuva, in some way they Chav give that power to a tzaddik. And Mashiach reveals it. That's one way to explain it. That's one way to explain it. Another way you can say is that maybe a tzaddik, just like the shak treatment, that a Baal Tshuva has it because the darkness is so dark, like he says in Tanya, that you're so thirsty that it just creates this type of unbelievable intensity of hunger and thirst that causes you to reach. In Inyan, because Tev is Ein Seif, maybe Mashiach will reveal such a level of Ein Seif and Kedusha that for a tzaddik that he had, please slam that door, please. What a tzaddik had, the fi'erach, the Ein Seif, that's how I would explain it. Because that, you understand, the fi'erach, the Ein Seif of Kedusha, for a tzaddik is just as much shak as what a Baal Tshuva has from Cheshech to Eir. But a tzaddik can't reach that on his own. Mashiach reveals that. In Derech Mitzvah, it's mashma like that, because he says, because he brings Mashiach, his Melech, and Mashiach is the Melech, not like David. David is Malchus, and Mashiach is Malchus, the Ein Seif. So you can say that Mashiach will be Megal, such a Dagan Elikus, that for a tzaddik, his Tev was as bad, is so distant, like for a Baal Tshuva, Cheshech and Eir. That's what I think, that's the way I would explain it. Because that answers another question, which is what happens after Mashiach comes. Aveda doesn't stop. So he says in the Keres HaKedesh, in Tanya, that then the Aveda will be Aliyas and Kedusha Gufa, from good to better. And it's true, from darkness to light is more dramatic, so to speak. Yeah, that's how I would explain it. Anyway, let's continue here.
You're going to be the Sienis when Mashiach comes?
Not Nisyanis like from darkness, but Nisyanis for sure in the sense of, look, when you're talking about an infinite journey, the closer you get to Atzmos, the more distant you feel. So when Mashiach comes, it won't be a war between evil and good, it'll be a war between good and then infinite good. And then another infinite good. I mean, in other words, we don't relate to it today because for us, the battle is dark and light and dark, but good and evil. We can't. It's hard to understand how from good, we should go to another good. In a way, it's actually harder because it's much easier, for example, a person to break a bad habit. It's bad, and I've got to go to a good habit. Maybe hard to do, but at least when someone is doing something good, there's nothing to break. I'm doing good already, like he says in Tanya in Perek Tezvav. It's like he learns Mei Pomim. So it's his Regilus. So, but Aveda means you have to break even Kedush, even Tev, the Regilus of Tev. So that is really the Aveda Losid Loki. That's Bapashas. That's always. That's not Nachid. That's what it says. So that's how I would say that Mashiach is Megala level that for a tzaddik, it's like he needs to do tshuva, like it says Ruach Tashuv El Elokim, not tshuva and Aveda, but tshuva to return to reach a much deeper place. So let's just continue here.
It's like you want to learn.
Zel Taltel.
You want to learn Yerushalmi, you have to completely just forget the Bab.
Yes,
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
You have a great Yetzer Tov, and then you have to get rid of the whole thing to get a new one.
Exactly right. I remember seeing when one of the things that amazed me most with the Rebbe was that he was able to do that, and he initiated himself. You see, the Frierdiker Rebbe and all the Rabbeim before, tomorrow's Ayin Beis Tammuz, they had a menagid that they had to fight. I'm not minimizing the Mesiras Nefesh. The Alter Rebbe had to deal with his imprisonment, had to deal with poverty, had to deal with czars. Tzemach Tzedek. The Frierdiker Rebbe was dealing with the Bolsheviks, the communists, life-threatening. To be a Jew was a war. The Rebbe came into a world, as Rebbe, 1950, no war anymore. World War II is over. It's true they had to rebuild the community from scratch in a sense, but there was no one out there shooting at you.
The Cold War, Russia.
So the Cold War, but Pnimius is the war of apathy, Kaltkeit, exactly.
Amalek.
Right. And the Rebbe's war was that we shouldn't take for granted. But it's a much harder war to fight because there's nothing forcing you. You wake up in the morning, you don't have to do anything. There's no one chasing you. And the Rebbe you saw himself challenging himself with constantly surpassing what he did previously without any menagid. No one was challenging him. which is like this is like the ultimate type of tshuva that comes not from that the managid you create by your own complacency that you just. By the Rebbe, the enemy was staying in one place. There's no such thing as standing in one place. Standing in one. The Rebbe would often say, life is climbing a mountain. You're either going up or you're going down. There's no such thing as there's no plateau. There's no resting. Anyway, so that's Lech Lecha. He's bringing the moshel, and that means moving. He's telling the Eibishter is telling Avram Avinu to move. So what we have is like this: Avram Meichus Tima is being commanded Lech Lecha to go to Yesher Shemokir of Makif of the Yechida, the Etzma Neshama, but that's only possible from Artzacha, when you come from the darkness of this world, and that's the moshel of the movement of that jar, that to release the reach, to release the Makif of Yechida, the reich of Keteris of Yom Kippur, can only come through tshuva when you move it, and you're moving the dafka from the darkness, from the Erchezer upward. That's the pirush of Lech Lecha Matzach. Okay, that's good. Like the Zeh Shimchem is Gadol, and Shimchem is Gadol. That's what the pasuk says afterwards. That the Eya Shimcha Gadol, right? It says in the pasuk that through Lech Lecha your name will become great. And the question here, as he said, Avram needs a great name. This is a PR thing. Avram is humble. Afer ve'efer. The Inyan Hagdolos Hashem, what is the concept of the great name? Who Amshachas b'chinas Shmoi ha'atzmi. You're not talking about the name of Avram Avinu. You're talking about the Hamshacha of Shmoi ha'atzmi, the essence, the essential Shmoi ha'atzmi, the essential name b'chinas Helam ha'atzmi, the Ein Seif. You're talking about revealing the essential name of the Eibishter, the Helam ha'atzmi of Ein Seif, the essential concealment that's concealed in Ein Seif. The Atshel Nivra Eilam Hayahu Shmei B'Lovad. Because until the world was created, him and his name, the Eibishter and his name, were alone, separate. They were the only thing that existed. V'nizbar Le'il, Perek Reish Zayin, and we learned earlier in Perek Reish Zayin, Shazayin Yeshem Aleph, Shalamaylam HaZayin Shems. That's the first name. That's higher than the 7 names, Shenim Nechokim. You know, the 7 names that we talk about, you're not allowed to erase. Havaya, Kael, Tzvokis, you know, those names, Alakim, etc.
Yeah, Adnai.
Adnai, yeah. And then there's a name that's higher than those 7. For who shades between the Shem Mad the Tikkun. Said this earlier in Perek Reish Tazayin. Let me just see.
We don't know that name, right?
We don't know how to pronounce it. We know the name.
Yud-Kei-Vav-Kei.
It's usually Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. I think that's what he's referring to. I said that, but maybe I'm not. That's where I'm looking.
There's a lower Shem Havai and a higher Shem.
There is a Shem Havai Leil Latata, but I don't know if that's what he means here. There's also Shem Eya. Eke, Eya. Hold on. I'm just looking at the Perek Reish Tazayin. I want to see what he said there.
Oh, yeah. That'll be cool. Hashem make this name.
I guess it's attributes, the way he comes, reveals himself.
But there's nobody to reveal himself, so what does the name mean at that point?
Hold on.
That's a good question.
That's Chassidus, that's a major Sugi Chassidus, that's Eir Ein Sof. Shmei refers to Eir. So it's
But it had a tchila, and itself had a tchila.
One second, let me just see something. B'shoshu b'chinas hu Shmei Shem Echad. Who's Shmei Shem Echad? Does he mean Shem? Maybe the Shem is Echad. That's the name of the Shem is Echad, not just one name. Shem Echad. I'm just looking. It's the end of Perek Reish. It's page Tofla Metches if you want to look. Hold on. Melech Hashmini b'shoshu b'chinas hu Shmei Shem Echad Shalman Zayin Shem Zaklun Ba'atzmus. Okay, I have to look into it a little more. I'm not sure exactly. Okay, it's very big kitzur here. Not sure exactly. The bottom line is a Shem Echad that's higher than the Zayin Shemis. So who shaves between the Shem Mad the Hatikun, the Tikkun. So the bottom line, that's the Gili of Shmei. Let's not discuss the Shmei Levad now. It's a whole different. I'm sure in Ayin Beis we'll get to such a subject. Yesh Lemer Gamkein. Okay, so what's the greatness of the name? That through Lech Lecha Ma'artzecha, through coming through the tshuva, the Nushenis, from the darkness, he comes to the Helam Ha'atzmi. That's why the name gets great, because he's talking about the Gili of Shmaya Atzmi, of the Helam Ha'atzmi that comes from this shame. V'yesh Lemer Gamkein, and we could also say the Agdol Hashem, the greatness, the intensification of the name, Hushi Hagdolas Hashem B'chinish Shmei Atzmi. It's a little different type of interpretation. Not the first interpretation is that you mamshich the Shmei Atzmi. Here, that Hagdolas Hashem, that the name of Avram should draw down from Shmei Atzmi. Because you see, the first Pirush Sof Kol Sof is not really Pshutei Shalinyan. Whose name is getting greater? Bagad l'Shemecha, the Pashtus in the Pasuk, is Avram Avinu, not Shmei from the Eibishter. Shmecha, Hashem is saying to the Avram, you go Lech Lecha, your name will become greater. So the first Pshat that Rebbe Rashab is saying, Shmecha really means the Shmei Atzmi. In other words, it's more of a Primis Dika Pirush, it's not the Pshat Mamash. Here he's adding that Agdol Hashem Shi Agdol Hashem B'chinish Shmei Atzmi. That Agdol Hashem of Avram should take from the Shmei Atzmi. So it's a little more fitting into the pasuk. V'zeh v'agad l'shmecha shezo ma'ilek deile b'Avram. And that's agad l'shmecha, that your name Avram will reach this great ma'ila. Not that your name will be known as in PR publicity, but that your name will now be rooted in Shmei Atzmi, in Helam Ha'atzmi. And all this is possible because of your movement and Lech Lecha, that you came from Artzecha, from the darkness of, and that brings the Er Chezer, the power of Tshuva. V'zeh v'yemer Hashem Avram.
What's the difference that it affects his name?
No, in other words, it's Mamshech in Avram, the level of Shmei Ha'atzmi. Yeah. Not as in his name will be known all over the world.
Right.
It will be that his name, meaning Avram's level, will be infused with Shmei Atzmi from Helam Atzmi.
Why did they call it shame? Because shame would be...
I guess because shame connects to Shmei Atzmi, because it means Avram's name is connected now to the name of the Eibishter.
And if that part's clear, the question, why does it, how does it affect Avraham? What's the connection between his name and Avraham that it would come to his name? How does it affect Avraham?
Well, Avram, remember the name is Avram, is Seichel Hanela Mechol Rayim. Moiches Tema is being connected with to Shmei Atzmi. So understand? I mean, it's not going to the. It's not this. Emphasis is not the name of Avram. The emphasis is the level of Avram. I mean, it's not really explaining why named after, but Avram is his name, and Avram is Moiches Tema. So I guess that's what he means. Because V'zehu v'yemer Hashem.
Maybe he's saying that because the Shema Atzmi, in other words, from the Shema Atzmi, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is going to be on the Shem. So in other words, it's
yeah, that's the shame. Yeah, I understand, yeah. Because if you didn't say Agad L'Shemecha, you wouldn't have... Agad L'Shemecha means your name Avram, meaning your level Avram, is Agadla, is becoming great, infused with Shmei Atzmi. Yeah. So your shame is becoming part of Shema Atzmi. Something like that. V'zehu v'yemer Hashem al Avram b'chin seichel hanelam. And this is the meaning of the pasuk. Hashem says to Avram, the level of seichel hanelam ukol raya and moichus tema. Lech lecha l'sharshecha mekercha ha'atzmi. Go to your root and source, your essential root and source. V'hu inyan taltal atzmecha. Like in the mashal with the perfume. And that's the meaning of move yourself. Taltal atzmecha. Shake yourself or move yourself. This is the movement from Artzecha and the Keich of Chezer. And through this, your name, meaning Avram's name, will become great. Why? Because the Shmei Hagadol, Ha'atzmi, of the Eibishter, will shine Begili through you, basically. So in other words, through Avram's Lech Lecha, which is Er Chezer, is the Hamshach brings the Shimcha Mizgadol, Shmei Atzmi will come down Begili. That's the shot. Okay, that adds something. So you understand? So that's the Shmei. That's why God the Shemecha becomes that Avram becomes now a channel for being Mamshech Shimcha HaGadol, revealed way, which comes from the Atzmis, which comes from the Lech Lecha, from the Erchez.
It's a Teitzah, basically.
Yeah. Omnom. Here's the kitzur. Omnom. It's the kitzur of the whole Reish Chav Beis. Omnom Kteris Yom Kippur B'Kedesh Kedoshim. The Kteris of Yom Kippur B'Kedesh Kedoshim Hu Inyan HaTshuva. It's just a kitzur of everything we learned. The Kteris Yom Kippur B'Kedesh in the Holy of Holies is Tshuva Shamam Shem Pnimis HaKesar. It's Tshuva that brings from Pnimis HaKesar. Dehina Isi B'Idre Rabba. It says in Idre Rabba and Zoyar, Ma'ar de Chutma. Those so-called owners of the nose, of the smell, mechad nukve chayin, umechad nukve chayin de chayin. From one orifice, from one nostril, comes chayin, life, and another one comes life of life. And he explains, chaytim uklei neshama. The smell, the nose, is a keli for the neshama. Neshama is drawn through the nose. V'zehu shehu shar hamechin. And therefore it's a gate to Mechin. V'hainu atzmus ha-Mechin. That means the etzem of the Mechin. Upeh shar l'chitzenis ha-Mechin. The mouth, when we speak, as we said, hevel alav, that's the chitzenis ha-Mechin. The sham kishur etzem ha-Neshama. And there you get connected to the etzem ha-Neshama. Umesham nimshach. The atzmus. The chetim. Mesham nimshach beis amshachas. And from the nose comes two amshachas. Remember, this is a kitzur, so chayin hu klolos achayis. From the right nostril, as you said, comes the chayis klolos achayis, the general life, the force, like when you breathe, just like the heartbeat, ratzu v'shuv. When you breathe, you mamshech chayis into the body. V'zeh neshama b'chinas hadfika b'ha'er pnimi. This is the neshama like the pulse, tefik, b'ha'er pnimi, meaning the chayis that goes inside that permeates the person. Chayin de chayin, the life of the other nostril is atzmis ha-neshama. Is not just regular life force, it's the etzem of the neshama. V'hadugma l'mayla, what does it mean in l'mayla? Chayin is makiv de yeshiv, chayin is kloli de elamis. Chayin refers to makiv of very yashar, which is the general chayis of the world. V'hagili,
The gili of this first level.
And this gili of the first level, either it's meir the makif is radiates, or it adds energy, life into the pnimi. And then the second level is chayin the chayin makif der chayzer pnimi satik. That's the makif of der chayzer that comes, as we said, through tshuva pnimi satik. Atzmis mechis temo b'chinas avira. That's the avira on top of the brain that we spoke about. So it's the etzem of mechis temo, not the chitzenis of mechis temo. And this is what it means, that the space where Meshbel Tshuva stand, tzaddikim gemurim, even with their usa deliba, which is kteris of every day, they're aved the makif, even their makif, they cannot stand there. Why? Because they don't have that ability to go to that erchezer. Gam zdenis nasim zochis, and through this the tshuva, even zdenis, even intentional sins become merits. Yeah. This is the shemen for anointment, which is higher than chitzenis chachmas dema, which is the other shemen, the shemen for the menorah. This is the higher one. And this is Mashiach, the level of that he will judge. Remember, judging was through Pnimius, which is the Atzmis of Chachmas Tema. Valkain also Tzadikai, also Lasovet Tzadikai B'Tiyufta. That's when Mashiach will also come and do and cause the Tzadikim to do tshuva. V'zeh vayemer Hashem al Avram Devudei Lagi LaAtzmis Chachmas Tema Lech LaChamakiv Diechida V'Agad LaShemecha B'Chin Shem Echad V'Yashlem B'Chin Shmei HaAtzmi.
Maybe we should have it for Farbrengen tonight.
Tonight I have a class in Manhattan, so I have a Farbrengen already. You're all welcome to come.
Late, after you finish there, you
Come back at 10:30.
That's good. Works for me, I don't. Everyone else is there.
Is they stand verbrengen? Is
Yeah,
anyone
because
anyone
there is
making
really nothing going on in the community.
Shkayach.
nothing going on? Really?
Yeah. Anybody
Where's
is
it
available
tomorrow?
tonight?
Where's the shirt tomorrow?